Okay, on this video, what we're going to do is we're going to make what we call our stock solution. And so that's going to be our initial solution, and we need to know this one accurately. So I'm starting to use my precise glassware here. Uh, After this, though, we are going to do what we call a serial dilution of this, and we're going to make a whole bunch of other solutions of different concentrations, all from this. So this is my stock solution. Now, you may be, I don't know if you've seen this type of glassware before. We call this a volumetric glass. So this is a 100 milliliter volumetric glass. And if you look carefully, you see a little piece of the glass has been etched right there. That's like a little line that goes around the neck. So this is for very precise measurement. This is called a to contain piece of glassware that when I fill the solution up to the mark here, I will accurately contain 100 milliliters. And that allows me to get a very precise, I can figure out what the molarity is, what the concentration is very precisely. And then from there, I will use this solution and I will try to have very accurate volume measurements as I make my serial dilutions. All right, so this is a very precise piece of glassware, and you should know that. So if you look closely on this particular one, it says plus or minus 0.1 milliliter. And if you think about that, that's out into the fourth sig fig. It's pretty darn good. Now, I happen to know that this blue dye that I'm using, blue number 1, is really, really potent. So again, I know this going in to it. What I am going to do right now is I'm going to try to make a very low concentration to the best of my ability. So I have my dye, it's like kind of purplish. It's kind of interesting that it's a purple reddish color right now. So I'm tipping my laptop down a little bit so that you can see the balance that I'm using. So let's open this up. I'm going to put in my weigh boat. And I'm going to tare my weigh boat. Sometimes people ask about the floating that you see here. This is so precise. It's out in the, it's out in the fourth decimal place of a gram, that you really can have air currents and things like that that can cause variations. And there's not a lot you can do about it unless you're either super patient and you wait and you try to get the air to be uniformly heated inside of here, stuff like that. I'm not that worried about it right now. So I've tared my scale. I'm going to try to get just like a tiny, tiny bit here. But I could have too little. And what I mean by that is I need to have some amount that I think I'm getting an accurate measure of from my scale. So let's just, I'm not going to put that away yet. Let me put this back in here. Okay. So right now I'm getting, if you look at this, I'm getting 2 sig figs with the 2 and the 0, and then that last one is floating from my third sig fig. If you do kind of think about this from a percentage basis, like what percent fluctuation am I seeing right now, I kind of feel like this is fluctuating a little more than I want it to. And so I'm going to come add a little bit more here. I'm going to maybe, I think I probably more than doubled that there. Okay, but I definitely don't think I'm going to use any more, so I just put the cap on. All right. You can see that floating happening in there. Again, that could be actual movement. So let's call that, I don't know if this is me shaking the table or something right now. So at some point we're going to have to make a judgment call. 482, 483, something like that. For 0.0483 maybe is what I'll end up running with there. Okay, so that's my measurement. 0.483 is what I'm going to go with. And now I need to add this to my volumetric glassware. All right, so I need to get it down here. The way that you use these correctly is you need to get this powder in here first, And that's always going to be a little bit of a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to taco my Weibo here, and I'm going to start pouring it down. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'm trying to very carefully kind of protect it here so that I don't lose any. And right now, I'm probably the only one that can see this, but it is going into the bottom here of my volumetric flask, so you can see that it's down there. Now, good lab practice would say, hold on a second, I still have some there that I'm not actually getting into here, and I'm going to try to correct that. So again, going with this tacoing this thing, I'm going to very carefully come in and I'm going to try to rinse this very slowly, and I'm trying to get all that blue dye to go down. Okay, I think that's probably about as good as it's going to get. You can see, just look how dark this is. I brought, just for reference, on the last video when you saw that I had a cuvette with the blue dye in it, and it was the least concentrated that I did, but very inaccurately. This was that cuvette. So let me see if I put it behind my somewhat white glove there. You can see that this is really pretty light compared to what I'm working with over here. This is, and I knew this was going to happen, this is way too concentrated to do spectroscopy with. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do another dilution of it. You can see I'm getting some blue dye that made it on the outside here. And so this is already some inaccuracies that I'm going to have. So when I'm doing an error analysis or something like that, I already know that I have some inaccuracies. So now I'm going to fill most of the way. So again, just for lab practice, or kind of like best practices, usually what you do is you fill these things to where they're getting pretty close to the top, and you kind of swirl it around like this. And I'm ensuring that all of the solid is getting dissolved when I do that. But you got to have a little bit of space left. You don't want to fill it all the way up to the mark that was on here and then try to stir it. That doesn't work very well. And I truly have a mess going. I'm glad I put gloves on here. Remember, this chemical won't hurt me. This is one of these FDA approved dyes. So, you know, people consume this stuff. But nonetheless, it sure is making a mess. Okay, when you get close to the mark, like again, there's the mark right there. Let me get in front of my blue shirt. Okay, there's the mark. When I'm getting close to it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to start doing more of a fine adjustment with my dropper here. And this is one of those situations where you want the bottom of the meniscus. So in order to properly measure that, I need to get down there, and actually that looks pretty darn good. All right, so this is now my stock solution. You can see all the, even though I was trying to be really careful, you can see all the blue that I managed to get everywhere here. So I'm gonna take these off before we do our next video here.